Boys, it's Chinned. Lately, the UFC has had some pretty sus matchmaking. Turns out it's because of Hunter Campbell and the other matchmakers, and Dana has no place in matchmaking, which is super weird, which is something that he's said that he's had a place in for his entire tenure in the UFC. But regardless, the sus matchmaking, it's not ending. We got Moreno versus Loner Kavanaugh in a couple weeks. We've had a Diego Lopez versus Volk rematch. Uh, it's just we're at a point where a lot of these divisions, it seems like number one contenders are not concrete. Seems like the next title challenger is never anybody that is expected. So I decided to make a video on who I think are the number one contenders in every men's division. I'm not doing female divisions. Feel like they're relatively straightforward. Wei Lee, Natalia Silva, Amanda Nunes. Yeah, starting with the men's flyweight division, it's Tatsuro Taira. In my opinion, it's Tatsuro Taira. Um, it's between him and Kopp, and I picked Taira because Kopp is just very unreliable. Kopp pulls out all the time. He'd miss weight. He'd be injured. It's happened countless times. It feels like over 10 times over the last few years that Kopp's been in the UFC that there's been a problem with the booking. Um, and it's usually his fault. I think Tyra is completely proven at this point. Obviously, he had that setback against Royval, but then came back and TKO'd Moreno, which not many people can do. That's a very impressive win that not many people talk about. Not many people picked him to beat Moreno, let alone finish him. Um, I think Tyra is by far the most deserving fighter in the division, just based on activity and just overall how he's winning fights. He's a great fighter. He's young. He's a great number one contender, and I hope that he fights Van sometime in the next couple months because Van didn't take any damage in his last fight. I would say Pantoja if he wasn't looking like he was going to be back in a few months, because I feel like a title shot or a title fight for flyweight is very, soon. I feel like that should be happening soon. Um, if Pantoja was ready to go, I'd say Pantoja, but right now I'm gonna say Tyra. Moving on to bantamweight division, I think it's Marab. I think Marab is the clear number one contender. I don't think anybody is really saying otherwise. O'Malley has one win over Song, and then domination losses to Marab back to back, and then Umar just got dominated by Marab as well, and has a couple very mediocre bounce back wins. I think the Mario Batista win has aged well, but is not a top five caliber win that can get you a title shot. And I think the Figgy win is just it's unimpressive. I mean, when you look worse than Corey Sandhagen against Figgy, I think that says something. Not being able to finish Figgy is just at this point in his career, and I understand it's Figgy, he's always going to be tough and all that, but Umar had basically 100% of that fight in the bag, and he never once took a risk or anything, and that's one of the main problems with him. He's boring. Uh, just on that alone, I think it eliminates Umar from title contention. Um, and Marab's one of the all time greats in the division, one of the all time greats in the sport. Period. I mean, I have him very close to my top 7 or 8 fighters in the UFC. He might even be in that top 7 or 8, along with Jan, who I think is very close there as well. They're neck and neck for the bantamweight goat conversation. They're 1-1. Uh, the trilogy is needed. It's a great fight, and I want to see it next for sure. Moving on to the featherweight division, this is a no-brainer. It's between the winner of Evloev versus Lerone Murphy. Obviously, Lopez just got his shot. I think it was pretty damn undeserved. But I'm happy that the UFC is moving in a direction where we can get a clear contender. I feel like it's been Evloev and Murphy for a couple of years now, just people talking about them two only. And yet they haven't gotten shots themselves, but they're fighting each other, so we're going to get a clear contender soon. It was a pretty quickly booked fight, even though there were rumors of it up to a couple months ago. I'm pretty excited for that one. That should be fun. I think Evloev's going to win that. But yeah, Lerone versus Evloev is definitely the winner of that deserves a title shot for sure. No brainer. Moving on to lightweight, same thing, no brainer. It's Justin Gaethje. He's the interim champion. He's going to get the next shot. If we're looking past Gaethje, let's just say Ilya knocks Gaethje out brutally. And it's just, okay, who's next? He posed no problem. I'm going to go ahead and say that unless Armin gets a fight booked soon, and wins. Let's just say Armin is inactive, as he tends to be, for, the next 4 or 5 months. I think the winner of Charles and Max deserves the shot against the winner of Gaethje versus Ilya. I understand the Armin thing. I don't think he deserves it. Um, he needs to get one more fight in. He's beaten Dan Hooker. That's not very impressive. Benoit's beaten Dan Hooker. So let's run Armin versus Benoit and Charles versus Max. And depending on how long it would take Armin or Benoit to get out and do that, I think Charles and Max, the winner of that, deserves the winner of Gaethje versus Ilya. Moving on to the welterweight division. In my opinion, one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC. Uh, I think it might be the best division. It might be the best welterweight division that we've ever seen. I don't think there's a welterweight division that's been as stacked as this in any point in time, in any organization. I think this is the best the welterweight division has been and likely will be for a long time. I mean, look at how stacked this is. Islam just moving up. Jack Della, Ian Gary, Michael Morales, Bilal, Prates, Sean Brady, Usman, Leon Edwards. I mean, this is the top 9 fighters here, including the champion. That is insane. You could say what you want about guys like Sean Brady and Leon and Usman, but I mean, this is an elite top 9. You need to be one of the best in the world, literally, to be top 10. Anybody in this top 10, with the exception of Gabriel Bonfim, perhaps, or Joaquin Buckley, is championship caliber in any other division. I think the clearest number one contender, this is just a personal opinion because this really is so up in the air here, is Ian Machado Gary. I don't like him. Nobody likes him. I get it. I get it. He's boring, but he wins fights decisively. And I say that he's boring. His Bilal fight was really damn good. It was a really good fight, and it's a really underplayed fight. And, he has the one loss to Shavkat, but nobody brings up the Bilal win. That's a very impressive win. And the Prates win, that eliminates Prates from title contention. It's he's on a crazy run in the UFC, whether you like him or not, and I think he deserves the shot. I know that they're planning on giving it to Usman, which is it is what it is. I think Usman, he's obviously washed. Maybe he can give Islam a couple problems, but the deserved title shot is Ian Gary, in my opinion. I understand arguments for Michael Morales. I just think he's a little bit too green, and maybe needs one more win in there, maybe against Jack Della. I think Ian Gary has been around longer. He's been fighting at a high level longer. He's just shown a lot more consistency where Michael Morales kind of looks flat in some fights. Ian Gary looks better every fight, it looks like. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that Ian Gary versus Islam Makhachev is the next fight to make. Moving on to the middleweight division, I think if you ask me, Nasruddin Imavov is the number one contender at middleweight. I say this only because he just has a crazy streak. He's on a very impressive run in the UFC. He's beaten Dolidze, Cannonier, Brendan Allen, knocked out Adesanya, and decisioned Bahallo, who is on a 16 fight unbeaten streak, I believe. That is an insane win. Those are all insane wins. It's a crazy streak, and he definitely deserves the shot. The question is whether or not Hamzat's going to be able to fight in the next year, because that seems to be the problem with Hamzat, is he only fights every fucking decade. Obviously, the Strickland and Fluffy Hernandez winner has a case for a title shot, depending on how long it's going to take to get Hamzat in there, how long it's going to take for Imavov to even want to fight, because he's been relatively quiet. There's a lot going on at middleweight. Imavov deserves the shot. He's my number one contender. But based on how seldom Hamzat or Imavov fight, this shot could end up getting to people like Dreykus or the winner of Strickland and Fluffy. So this is kind of up in the air, but I would say if you made the fight right now, it's definitely Imavov that is deserving of the shot. Moving on to light heavyweight, where we have kind of an interesting situation. Yuri and Olberg should be fighting for a vacant title should Pereira vacate. That seems to be the decision that everybody's going with. It's Yuri and Olberg, and it makes a lot of sense, of course. Ankalaev just got knocked out. He should be fighting one or two more times before he gets a title shot. Khalil just got knocked out. It's a very straightforward division. If Pereira doesn't vacate, I feel like a lot of people are thinking it's a no-brainer that he does, and I understand it. But let's just say he doesn't. You have to give it to Olberg. Olberg is the clear number one contender in this division, purely based on the fact that Yuri has been knocked out by Pereira twice already. If Yuri and Pereira was a fresh matchup or even just a second fight between them, I would go ahead and give it to Yuri. But no, I think Olberg, he's on a, what, 9 fight win streak now. I understand he's had some sus decisions here and there, but he's the number one contender to me. Um, you can downplay the Reyes win all you want. Reyes was on a pretty impressive streak. The Jan Blachowicz win, I scored it for Blachowicz, but it is what it is. Olberg won that fight. You have to give it to him. I don't like him either. He's the number one contender. But yeah, if Pereira vacates, it's a no brainer. You got to do Yuri and Olberg. That's not even up for debate, in my opinion, at least. Nobody else here is good enough to be fighting for a title. Now, moving on to the final division, this is an interesting one because it kind of plays hand in hand with 205. Heavyweight might be introducing Alex Pereira soon. And if Aspinall is out for an extended period of time due to the surgery that he just got the other day, I would go ahead and say set up the interim fight between Pereira and Gon. So that leaves Gon as the number one contender in the heavyweight division. If Aspinall is healthy, you put Gon against him in the rematch. I think you have to run that. It's only fair, and there's a lot of fan discourse. That would be a big selling, a highly watched fight. Yeah, I know they don't do pay-per-views anymore. That would be a highly watched fight. Gon and Aspinall 2 should be the fight to make next. If not, then you run Pereira and Gon for an interim. Winner fights Aspinall. They're both equally, as interesting fights to me at least. Um, yeah, I mean Aspinall Pereira definitely could main event like the White House. So I guess it's not an as interesting fight, but the point is Gon is the number one contender. Pereira might find himself in that mix at some point. Maybe even Waldo, with one more quality win, finds himself, competing with Gon for a title shot, depending on how long it takes Aspinall to get into the mix again. But yeah, this has been my picks on the number one contenders in every men's UFC division. Subscribe, comment, like, take it easy. This has been Shind.